What is up, my fellow citizens? It's Gio here, and today we're going to be talking about a very special vehicle that I'm looking forward to, and that is the Tumbril Nova tank. Now, I will be calling it a Tonk from here on out, because if you haven't watched the holiday live stream, go back and watch. You'll get your reason of why it's called a Tonk from here on out for me. But one thing I did notice about this tank, just right off the rip, the timing, I don't know what it was, but Grand Theft Auto just released a heist DLC, okay? In this DLC, there was a tank called the Kanjali, I think Kanjali, I'm probably butchering the name, TM02. The moment I seen this tank get released, I was like, oh my god, this looks exactly like the tank on Grand Theft Auto. So, you know, both of them look kind of similar to me. I mean, it's kind of scary how similar they look, but both of them are takes on modern tanks, and that's where I kind of wish CIG would have went a little more sci-fi-er. I don't know if that's a word, but a little more sci-fi on the tank than what Grand Theft Auto, because Grand Theft Auto also went for a more futuristic tank, but looks something like modern. Even with this tank, it looks like a modern day tank. Like, this looks like it could be made right now. It doesn't look sci-fi enough for me as much as I would like, but they did do a Q&A explain that, why there's no hover tanks and stuff like that, so we'll get into that a little later. But I just wanted to bring that up, and I'm not saying that CIG stole from them. It's just, it's such a simplistic design, and you know, they didn't really take any chances on this, and maybe hopefully down the line we'll see maybe an Aegis tank. I think Aegis will make a awesome ass tank. Fingers crossed for that. But anyways, let's get on to all the other stuff about this tank. Now, real quick before we hop into the Q&A, I just want to say I really loved how they, you know, did a nice little throwback nod to G.I. Joe, one of my favorite cartoons when I was growing up. You know, nice little nod to that. And one more thing before we hop into the Q&A stuff is, you know, some of my problems, you know, with this tank is, one, is the size of it. I do like it being a big ass tank, lots of armor. I do like that. And you know, you got room inside. I think that's pretty cool. But the problem with this is loading this big sumbitch in some ships, because right now, I mean, the only ships, you know, for sure we know is the Idris. You know, I'm pretty sure Javelin. I think I've seen a picture of the Polaris that had 6 of them in there, but it was like a bootleg way. I don't even know how to even stuff them in there, so you know, that's not really confirmed, but you know, there's a possibility it could fit. We don't know about the Carrack yet. Gemini, I don't think so, because of that door is so damn small in the back. So it's a lot of question marks with a lot of ships. So if you only have a couple small ships, or you know, like Constellation, Cuddy, you know, lower ships than that, you're definitely not going to be able to fit this, and that is going to be a problem with this thing, unless they come out with that ship that they were talking about when we voted on the next Drake ship. And that was the Starlifter. The Starlifter never even made it into the top 3 to get voted in. But that ship I was always interested in, you know, off the rip, being a carrier of larger vehicles, or you know, placing stuff down. I think that is one of the main vehicles that we actually do need in the verse. So hopefully they're looking at that and making that for 2018 for sale on concept, because we need that thing, especially if we're going to get big ass tanks on this size. We're going to need something to drop it. And okay, 2 is like I said, I know I like the throwback. Okay, I like the old look tank style. Cool. I just kind of wish they would have waited later, or just added a couple of things that, you know, made this a little more futuristic. Like, for instance, if I'm dropping this tank off, we're gonna have to land on planets instead of just flying over and dropping these. Like, even nowadays, I see tanks drop from parachutes. Like, they don't even land. They could drop them from the sky. This thing should have some type of, you know, hovers on it. I'm not saying hover all the time, a short time, because then people would just be hovering around on the land like, and it'd be a full-time hover tank instead of using the treads. Just a small boost before they hit the ground, you know, and it could kind of just like hover down. Something like, hell, even on Star Fox, me and my buddies were talking about this. Star Fox was a little more, you know, futuristic tank. I think it hover, flip over, use this little boost, but you could only use it for so long. So I think that was a cool thing that they could probably took some Star Fox to put on this tank, because right now you have to land instead of you just drop it out of the sky, and the pilot can keep going, and then the ground units could get going to doing what they were doing. So I think that would be a good idea. Maybe they could work that in here because it's still in concept phase. I think that'd be pretty dope. But those are pretty much my only gripes with this thing. I mean, I really love it. It's so much room inside. A lot of my buddies was like, man, real tanks I've been in service, you did not have this much room, like, at all. So that is pretty cool in seeing how you're going to be able to actually, pilot this thing with all monitors. Because obviously you're not going to look out the window. People who bought this, there's no window, in this. You're going to have to operate this from screen. So that should be a pretty cool thing as well, getting to learn how to pilot a tank in that. But let's get on to the Q&A questions. Not all of them, just the ones I found, most interesting to me. Now, the first question, I was just talking about this. What ships will the Nova fit in? The Nova is a serious war machine, bigger and more massive than all other ground vehicles introduced to date. One consideration, however, is height, as the Nova requires ships with a high ceiling. The Idris, for instance, has ample clearance, but many cargo ships do not. So yes, that right there is one of my main problems. That's what I'm saying. The Starfarer, it has the height ceiling, but the door ceiling when it comes in, I don't think is going to fit. So that is going to be a problem, and I just hope so. CIG, if you're listening, please make the Starlifters. Somebody can make it. Hell, matter of fact, I think Misk would be a very good manufacturer for the Starlifter. Maybe not Drake. I think I'm glad that Drake kind of didn't have the Starlifter because it kind of didn't fit them. Misk, it'll probably fit, or even Consolidated Outlands could do it. I think the Starlifter needs to go in their hand, because if we're going to have vehicles this size for, ground combat, we definitely need that Starlifter, okay? Can the Nova be loaded or dropped from a dropship? Yes. However, given its intimidating size, the Nova tank can't fit in most currently available ships. Any present or future ships able to transport the Nova can also drop it from a reasonable height, to be determined in development. While it's not advised, provided it lands upright, its tracks and hull are sturdy enough to survive this kind of maneuver. Now, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. There's a lot of ships that are not going to be able to carry this tank, and we are going to need something like, the Starlifter to come in. And also what I was talking about earlier, if this thing had some type of, boost, like the Star Fox tank. If you guys haven't played Star Fox, I'm pretty sure it's a YouTube video on it. Look how that thing dropped out of a ship, and it would have some type of, hover capabilities. You couldn't do it for long, but it would make a lot of sense with this, instead of make some kind of, parachute device or something crazy, or even risk damaging your tank. Because right now, this doesn't sound too sure. Like, how high can we drop it, before it breaks? I know it's a big, tough, sturdy-ass tank. I know the crew shouldn't be in there, because I'm pretty sure they could die from, getting dropped like that. So it'd be interesting to see how they kind of work that stuff around. So I can't wait to see what kind of ships are going to be in development, or what ships can hold, this tank in 2018. What are the crew positions? The driver and support crew are at the front of the tank, while the gunner is in the middle of the tank in a separate room. Now, I brought this one up because obviously I know there's a max crew of 3, but I seen a picture of, it was actually 4 people on the tank instead of just those 3. So maybe I'm thinking that you could have maybe 2 or 3 people standing in the back of the tank, if things get a little out of hand in like urban areas, or just a lot of fire, period. You want to hop in the tank and stay protected from that armor. So I think that'd be a pretty cool thing. I'm not for sure. Just, I'm looking off the picture, just kind of like, maybe that's a possible thing. So we'll have to see. Does the Nova hold any cargo? The Nova Tonk does not hold any cargo, but it can be used to clear the way for other ships and vehicles, allowing them to grab cargo. The tank exists to protect and destroy, but not to transport. I was kind of a little sad about this one, because I was like, this tank's pretty big. You could maybe carry some cargo, but it makes sense. This thing is just there to pretty much wreck face, but I would probably still try to carry some cargo in here loosely, just throw them in the back. It won't be secure, but hey, maybe throw some extra ammo or something crazy in there, who knows. Now, this was the main question I wondered from the get-go when I saw this Tonk. Considering we have grav-lev technology, why isn't the Nova a hover Tonk? While the grav-lev technology is indeed a thing, it is expensive to produce and maintain, and is more vulnerable to things like distortion damage. What the Nova loses in agility, it gains in defense. So I do like that this is more reliable than, you know, maybe a Gravlev tank would have been, and it like they said, it is cheaper to produce. So maybe in the future we could see a more offensive tank that has, you know, more agility and offensive capabilities and less defense. So that's where I think a cool Aegis tank will come in handy, because, you know, they have the money for it. This is more of a company that just got back into the swing of things. We know Aegis has that, you know, the military money to make something, you know, insane. So hopefully in the future we will get our hover tank. It just won't be as beefy as this bad boy will be. Does the Nova have any weak points? Yes, while the Nova has a formidable defense, its rear entry point and exposed parts of its tracks are weak spots. Any operator should be cautious and avoid exposing these areas to last longer on the battlefield. Now, the other two weaknesses that I would say on here is, one is probably the speed. Right now it's 44 miles an hour. My M1 Abrams tank could go 60 plus nowadays. So I think CIG should really look into that and just do a little more tank research with this. And also with the gun placement, I think it's offset left, I believe. So you kind of want to put it in the center, because you expose yourself, you know, on the left, and it's really not good for urban combat. So I would definitely look into that type of stuff, because you actually want to have, you know, the functionality instead of, you know, kind of looking cool, even though it does kind of look cool on the offset. But if the gun was centered, the left side would be less exposed like how the right is. So CIG, hopefully you look a little more into that. Like I said, it is concept, so, you know, whatever. But did you guys get one? How many did you get? I think I'm gonna keep 2 or 3, because I'm gonna need these protecting my Pioneer, and I'm gonna be busting through jungles, you know, tearing down trees and making ways with this thing. So it's gonna be a pretty fun vehicle. But you guys have a blessed day, and one more thing, Star Citizen for life.